Praise and salutations be upon our Master, beloved, the chosen one from the creation, and the Imam and the leader and the intercessor of the people. Praise and salutations be upon him and his family and companions. O Allah, pray, send your prayers and salutations and blessings upon our Master Muhammad's family and companions. Habib begins with salams and he's reading the intentions of Imam al-Haddad. In this lesson, from the lesson of Treatise for the Seekers of Guidance, we've taken from the words of the author, where he talks of the corruption of the heart. And corruption of the heart is corruption for the body, and corruption of the heart is corruption of one's character, and corruption of one's character is corruption of one's life, and corruption of one's life is corruption of one's religion. In fact, all types of corruptions, the foundation or the source of it is the heart. So we find that the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, when he spoke of in the beginning of the creation of man and the beginning of the blowing of the spirit, and then how the angel is sent by Allah and he blows in him the spirit, and he writes his age, his work, his destiny, etc. And then after that he says, truly in the body there's a organ. If it's corrected, then all of the limb is corrected, and that is the heart. And these are true. This is the truth. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that if the heart is sound, that all of the body will be sound. He says all of it. The word uses all of it. And if it is corrupted, then all of the heart is corrupted. Meaning, if the corruption of heart is the corruption of the body and the corruption of the spirit, the hearing is corrupted, the tongue is corrupted, all of the other limbs are corrupted. So for this reason we say, and we've said previously, that a battlefield for the devil, it's the field of it is the heart, is the hearts. So the devil enters into this battle in the hearts of the children of Adam, the one who whispers again and again to the hearts of the men. So it is a battle between the soldiers of Ar-Rahman and the soldiers of the devil. So this is why Allah sends to you agents or soldiers from his armies, from the angels. But you need to be one who knows how to deal with the angels. So if you know how to deal with the angels, then Allah will assist you from his divine assistance, and will send to you these angels that will cast away all of these whispers. But as Habib has mentioned, you need to be someone who knows how to deal with the angels. And how do you deal with the angels? What is it that draws the angels to you? Is a lot of dhikr, to stay consistent in wudu, to have God consciousness and good deeds. These are all this is what it means by how dealing with the angels. And inshallah tonight we'll complete the causes for which the hearts are corrupted, and today is a very important lesson. In the name of Allah, the most gracious and merciful, praise and salutations be upon our Master Muhammad, his family and companions, from the book Treatise for the Seekers of Guidance by Imam Hasim. May Allah have mercy on him, and may we be united with him and our teachers in the highest of paradise. May Allah be pleased with you all. The source of the heart's corruption is failing to take account of the soul and being deceived into expecting a long life. Therefore, if you want to rectify your heart, take time to question your desires and thoughts. Engage in those things that are strictly undertaken for the pleasure of Allah and leave everything else. Help yourself to conquer the expectation of the longevity by constantly remembering death. So when the author spoke of in the previous lesson, he said that he found that the corruption of heart leads to the corruption of the religion. We know that the corruption of the heart corrupts the religion. Now, what is this? What is the source of corrupting the heart? There are many causes. The author, however, by the light of his unveilings, by the light of the knowledge that he possesses, it has been clarified for him that, or notice, he says, look what he says. He says the source. He didn't say the cause. He says the source. So source is the foundational thing, and from the source comes other branches. So that we know that this author is giving us the diagnose of the source of the problem. So if you know the main problem, the source of the problem, you know the source, the main cure, the cure. You don't need like painkillers and something to treat just the symptoms. You need the cure. He says the source of the heart's corruption is failing to take account of the soul. And these are absolutely right words. Why do our hearts get corrupted? Because we don't take it into account. We leave it to do whatever it wishes. We leave our souls to do what they please. If there was an employee, he was employed for a particular employment, and then he found out that there's actually nobody taking him into account, nobody, and he has access to the accounts, and he deals with all of the accounts, and he transfers money to himself from the treasury of the company. Nobody's taking him into account, nobody's observing him, nobody's watching over him. So that will lead to him getting corrupted and taking over the company. So for this reason, we know now that the source of the heart's corruption is failing to take account of the soul. So this taking of account, this muhasabah, let's talk about this, because we need to know why we should take our soul into account. Tonight, Habib will talk about, inshallah, how to do this accountability, self-accountability. What are the things that help us do this self-accountability? What is the appropriate time for this self-accountability? Then, after this, how do you follow up on yourself after you do this accountability, self-accounting? Firstly, this accounting or checking yourself, it has two meanings. The first meaning is to check, to take it into account every single day. The second type is to the first one is the common, is the taking into account for the common people. Then you have the taking into account for the elite, which is to take yourself into account in every single step it takes. And this is what has been covered in this book. The third type of taking into account is to take your soul into account in every single breath. And the meaning of this is explained to worship Allah as if you witness Him, to witness Allah's observing you. This is a high level. We're not talking about this. Let's talk about the first step, which is to take the soul into account. What is the best time to take yourself into account? We have, for instance, the night and the day. We have 24 hours. What is the best time? The scholars say any time. You can take yourself into account in any single moment. You want to take yourself into account before the sun rise. You want to take yourself into account before Fajr prayer. You can do that. But they say the best time for the for taking yourself into account is before going to bed. Why? Because it is logical. Is that the logic? It's logical to think that accountability is after doing work, meaning you've done work, and after you've done work, you take yourself into account. You do you check your balances at the end of the transactions taking place. So for this reason, taking yourself into account, the best time to do it is before going to bed. So before going to bed, you you make wudu, and if you've delayed your witr, then you pray your witr, and then you sit on your prayer mat. You had your dinner, you've sat with your family, and you've spoken to your children, and you're preparing yourself to go to bed. So before going to bed, you sit for 5 minutes and you take yourself into account. And that is the best time. And why is this? Why is taking your soul into account before going to bed is the best time? Because the last action of your is because it is the last thing you do in your day, and also you sleep repentant. So if death comes to you, you are in a state of repentance. Be- and because when how are you repentant? You're repentant if you've taken yourself into account. Thirdly, you've made a resolve to correct yourself. You've repented, and you've also corrected yourself. This is what is meant by taking yourself into account before going to bed. Okay. What helps in doing this accountability, or what is it that helps you to take yourself into account? Firstly, your daily routine. Assume somebody has no daily schedule or routine. He's left himself to do whatever time he has. So he's like, I have no plan for tomorrow, but whatever comes to my mind, I'll do it. How will this person take himself into account? So you need to take yourself into account for a schedule that you made for yourself. Then you take yourself into account by asking yourself, have you done or followed the schedule that you've put for yourself? Did you read the Quran that you said you would do? Did you pray Fajr in congregation? Did you give charity? This is what accountability means. So what helps in taking yourself into account is to prepare for yourself a schedule, a timetable for what you're going to do, the actions that you're going to do. And this is something very important. And we've said the highest form of scheduling your day is to make for every moment or for every hour something that you do. Even your sleep. So let's say you sleep 6 hours, you put that as part of your schedule that I will sleep 6 hours maximum. And how do you schedule your sleep? You schedule your sleep with three things. You specify the time frame of sleep, you specify the time you'll sleep, and you'll specify the time you'll wake up. As for the one who just sleeps just like that based on how he's feeling, no, it doesn't work like that. So we organize our sleep with three things by specifying the time frame, how long I need to sleep, and it's not a requirement that you sleep until you're completely satiated like food. So like if you don't eat to your fill, that does not mean you're going to die or your body's going to be malnutrition. No, you sleep as much as your body needs. So, and you specify when you'll sleep and when you'll wake up. So this is the first thing that you can do that helps you to take yourself into account. Secondly, the thing that will help you in taking yourself into account, that you prepare for yourself a schedule that is within your uh, capability. Because if you were to make for yourself a schedule that is very burdensome and dense, and then later on you take yourself into account, you find that you've only done a third of your schedule, then you would feel helpless and hopeless. And many people try and try. They all of a sudden they get this aspiration and they say, tomorrow I'll do this and this and this. But then when the day comes, um, some out of the ordinary event happens, and their entire routine gets spoiled. Or a guest came, uh, uh, um, uh, like just all of a sudden. So you need to prepare for yourself a schedule which is within your means, within your capabilities. The third thing is that is to have something is that is flexible. There are some things that are rigid. Rigid things mean that they cannot be done in any place or any time. They have to be done. Something uh, is something that you need to do something particular, and you need to specify the time and place to do this. You can't just do this walking around. This is something that is this is like the foundational pillar of your schedule. This is something that's not flexible. So but then you make some things that are flexible. What does it mean by flexible? Meaning if there is a out of the ordinary event that takes place, and you're not able to do this particular deed, then you can replace it with something else. Meaning, for instance, somebody wishes to listen to a lecture, a dars on the internet, and he says, I'm going to take a book from the books of fiqh, and I'll choose a sheikh that I am confident of, for instance Habib Umar, and he has some recorded lessons in the book, for instance, of Al-Muwatta of Imam Malik. So I'm going to listen to this lecture every day after Fajr, or after I return back from work. This requires you to sit and focus. Some people say, I'm going to drive and listen. Listening is different than paying attention. This is knowledge. You're not just listening to a nasheed. The thing that you pay attention to, uh, and you're driving a car, is like a nasheed or something of this sort, maybe. But sacred knowledge requires focus, requires taking notes. So you prepare for yourself, or you schedule for yourself a a an action that you can do if you're a flexible action that you can do, if your foundation doesn't work, a foundational event doesn't happen. And this flexible action is dhikr. So dhikr is what you do if you missed out on something that you had scheduled to do. So this is what helps you to take yourself into account. The third point, which is very important: how do I take myself into account? Or what do I take myself into account for? So taking the soul into account, it should be for three things. You take it into account um, uh, if it obeyed the commandments of Allah Azza wa Jal, which is the acts of worship and obedience, and the voluntary sunnahs. This is what is comes into under the commandments. Secondly, you take into account for the prohibited things that it does, that it may that it if the, for the prohibited things that it may have done. Thirdly, you take it into account for its gratitude towards Allah. So you get gratitude and dhikr. You take it into account for both of them. So you take it into account for all the blessings that has been given, of all of those blessings. You take it into account. So for this reason, your accountability will be on your deeds. If you fell short in performing them, if you forgot them, if you delayed them, then you take it into account. For instance, he intended to pray in congregation in the mosque, or pray in congregation at home or at the mosque, at work. So he prayed without congregation. So you must. So what? Now you need to take into account whatever you've fallen short for prayer or worship, or fallen into sin. There is a reason behind it. The reason is either apparent or hidden. So this is why your accountability should be true, meaning you need to have a bad opinion of yourself. You need to look and examine and find out, and you need to be true to yourself. If you're not true to yourself, you will remain deluded. Be true and examine and find out. For instance, you missed out on congregation prayer in the mosque. What is the cause of this shortcoming? Is it laziness? Take it into account for it. You ate a lot. Take that into account. And similarly, you should do for sin. If one falls into sin, first thing is to repent to Allah Azza wa Jal, and you specify the sin. Second, and then you ask, why did you disobey? Why did you backbite? And then you look for the cause, and then you look for the expiation of that sin. Now, this is actually a lengthy topic, but this should suffice. Now, he says the source of the heart's corruption is failing to take account of the soul. So now we know um, that if we take ourselves into account with truthfulness, we will, without doubt, our hearts will be corrected, will be sound, will become sound. Now, the second cause of corruption of heart is being deceived into expecting a long life. And this is a strange reason, or what is the connection between expecting a long life and corruption of heart? Because if that for the tongue, if for the human death is forgotten, then shaitan adorns for the soul, for that person, the dunya. Why does the shaitan make us forget death? To make us see this life as beautiful, so that we start seeing sins as not having any effect on us, and he hides it from us. So for this reason, the ulama say that from the means of the devil to attack a person is forgetfulness. So if you forget zikr, it's from shaitan. If you forget a act of worship from the worships, then it is from the shaitan. If, let's say, you prepared for yourself a routine, a schedule, and then you've forgotten about it, You've forgotten about it 100. There's no doubt that this forgetfulness is from shaitan. If you've forgotten dhikr, know that it's from shaitan. If you've forgotten, as we've mentioned, the remembrance of death, it is from the devil. Now, know that the devil strives as much as it can to make you forget death, because he knows that death is the truth. Even the atheist believes that the death is a reality. The atheist who says, God forbid, there's no God, he cannot deny death. He tries not to die, but he cannot. So remembering death is a real cure for fixing the heart. Why? Because death is the greatest means of organizing one's time. So all that we spoke about, organizing one's time and schedule, if you want something to encourage you to do that, remember death. That you have no time left. So for this reason, in in the he says help yourself to conquer the expectation of longevity by constantly remembering death. Also, we spoke about expecting a long life. Remembering death means that does not mean that you say I will die, I will die, I will die. That does such that you live in this horrid state. No, what is intended by remembering death is that you you live knowing that if you die, you will be taken into account. So you prepare yourself for death. So if everyone knew or brought to mind that he will be asked, uh, he worships preparing himself to meet Allah, he makes wudu preparing himself to meet Allah, then this is something really great. Also, the one who is afraid of remembering death, then he can change it by remembering the meeting of Allah. As Allah says, as for the one who wishes to meet his Lord, then let him do good deeds. As Sayyidina Ibrahim said, Sayyidina Bilal said, tomorrow we will meet our loved ones. Muhammad and his group. He didn't say tomorrow we will die. He said tomorrow we're going to meet our loved one, Sayyidina Muhammad and his companions. And the least level of having uh, uh, least level of having expectation of long life is to say inshallah whenever you make a plan. So you say inshallah if Allah wills. This is the least level of having less expectation. Most people nowadays say inshallah for things that are after some time, like inshallah after a month I'll travel, even though inshallah can be used even for your next breath. So he says, therefore, if you want to rectify your heart, so he's given us the source of heart's corruption, and then he says, therefore, if you want to rectify your heart, take time to question your desires and thoughts. So he's giving us the steps. These are words of the elite and the great ones, that if you want to begin your journey of taking yourself into account, he says you need to take time to question your intentions. You want to take yourself into account. We've spoken about actions and words. We actually begin with taking your intention into account. Even if you've scheduled recitation of the Quran, which is great, but what is your intention for reading the Quran? So we take ourselves to account for the good deeds that we do, but also your intentions. For instance, you prayed, and you prayed in the mosque. Great, but what was your intention? What was your intention that people see you in the mosque, or what? So you take time to question your intentions. Your intentions in your deeds, your intentions in your good deeds and in your habits, your intentions in going to sleep, in waking up, in putting on clothes, in leaving your house, etc., etc. And he says, and also your thoughts. You question your thoughts. So engage in those things that are strictly undertaken for the pleasure of God, and leave everything else. A thought is like someone knocking at your door. So the thought is a knocker at the door, at your door. It could be that this knocker, this person could be someone from the family, that someone at the door, or someone at the door could be someone, so it could be your neighbor, could be your relative, or this neighbor, God forbid, could be a thief. What do you do? Do you just open the door immediately? No, you look through your peephole. The peek hole, you look and you see, who is this person? If it's a person that you know and you trust him, you open the door for him. Then you allow him to enter. So the first is to look, then it's opening the door, then it's permitting it to enter. But you don't allow the person to enter, except, as he's mentioned, that it's strictly undertaken for the pleasure of Allah. Meaning, you don't let any thought enter your heart unless it is for the sake of Allah. Because if something enters the heart, and if that thing has darknesses inside, it'll corrupt the heart, and you will tire yourself in removing that darkness, because it has effect. The effect of heedlessness and sin, especially if it's been done for a long period of time, then it tires the person in striving, in cleansing the heart. So let's say a person spent a long time in disobedience, but he then intended to repent, but the devil tries to tire him by reminding him of what's in his heart. So he'll remind him of things that he did long time ago, and he'll say, remember you did such and such, you did such and such, and he'll try to take out all of these vile files, old files that he did, that the person, uh, uh, the things that through which shaitan entered your heart. But we tell that person, don't be saddened. All those thoughts, even if they were in the millions, they can all go from one divine gaze, from one gaze from Allah Azza wa Jal. All of them can go, whatever they may be. So for this reason, you need to seek help from Allah Ta'ala. Also, these thoughts that we've spoken about in the previous lessons from the book Minhaj al-Abidin of Imam al-Ghazali, we've explained their details and the different types of thoughts and how do we expel them. So whoever wishes to hear them, then he can go over those lessons. I have found that the sources of the varying types of excessiveness that affect the heart manifest themselves in hearing, sight, speech, food, clothing, and houses. Excessive hearing leads to forgetfulness and heedlessness. Excessive sight leads to heedlessness and confusion. Excessive speech leads to empty chattering and heretical utterances. Excessive food leads to greed and artificial needs. Excessive clothing leads to boasting and ostentatious behavior. Excessively large houses lead to waste and conceit. So Imam Hasibi mentions a lot the problem with excessiveness, uh, and we mentioned that excessiveness is something that is that you're not in need of, or that does not concern you. And usually, the one who enters in excessiveness or unnecessary stuff is somebody who wastes his time. He doesn't have a schedule or routine. He has free time. So he's excessiveness in his hearing, in his sight, in his speech. And he says, let's check out the mall to see what's new. He's not in need of visiting the mall. So he wastes his time and he wastes his money as well. And he says, I have found. So he said, when he says, I have found, that means that this person now knows reality. It's not uh, 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 so this is also source of corruption of heart. He says it's caused by excessiveness in hearing, sight, speech, food, clothing, and houses. So all these are a means um, that but which your heart can get corrupted. So what is excessiveness in hearing? So listening to what does not concern you and what you're not in need of, it will make you enter into forgetfulness. Because if you hear a lot of stuff regarding uh, anything, like this person is talking about politics or this person is talking about economics, so listening to a lot of different things like that, you it will definitely make you forget the foundational stuff, or the most important things in your life. This is why they say to listen to the Quran a lot makes you firm. So if you want something to be consistent with you, then listen to it a lot. What is the thing that you want to be consistent with you a lot? You want La ilaha illallah to be consistent with you. This is why you should then preoccupy your tongue and your heart with La ilaha illallah. So for this reason, a person should raise his voice so that his ears hear La ilaha illallah. And this is also one of the benefits of doing congregational dhikr, is that you hear La ilaha illallah. So it leads to heedlessness and confusion, or it leads to forgetfulness and heedlessness. And then he says the excessive side leads to heedlessness and confusion. That a person, when he looks at the world and its adornments, there's no doubt that he will become heedless. For instance, a person, uh, his spouse requests from him to go to the marketplace to buy a particular thing. That I want you to buy this specific thing which is in this specific market. So she specified the thing to buy and she specified where to buy from. So the husband then goes out to go and buy this. But then this husband looks here and there uh, at things other than what he's supposed to buy. So he looked at another thing that he was impressed by, and he bought that. And then when he returned home, his wife asked, "Oh, did you get what I asked you to get?" And he's like, "Oh, I forgot." And he's like, "Oh, I forgot, but I got this." And she's like, "No, but where's the thing I asked you for?" Does that happen? It happens. Why did he forget? Because he started looking at things that he wasn't supposed to. So for this reason, dunya, the world, it really makes us forget the meeting of with Allah Azza wa Jal, makes us forget the dhikr of Allah Ta'ala. So for this reason, it is a person should try his utmost to lower his gaze. That, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do not extend your gaze to the things that of this world that are adorned, to the disbelievers, to test them in this world. So we say, where are we when it comes to implementing these words? One person could say that these words are appropriate for the age of the author or the time where they lived. They didn't have the world and the cars and the buildings and the marketplace and the clothes. One of us, if he were to go to a restaurant, And if he sees the menu, he'll be so confused and amazed by the different colors and pictures. Uh, Previously, we used to see the name of we used to see the name of the dish and its cost, but now we see the dish, its ingredient and its ingredients as well. It's got like vegetables and all the different names of vegetables inside it, and then it says, okay, it's only for 200 dirhams, and just they're like, it's worth it. You pay the 200 dirhams, and you're still hungry. So excessive sight or excessive looking, and it leads to confusion. If a person looks here and there to wherever he wishes, he will be confused. He'll be like, should I go here or here or here? And every one of us has gone through this phase. You want to get something, but you have like a million options. This is good, and this I don't know how it ends. So it's like, because it's a marketplace. True, it's beautiful, but me as a human, as a Muslim, I need to specify what I want because it's not foundational for my life. People nowadays have made these things their foundation, their primary things, and they've wasted their life, they wasted their money, and they wasted their time. It's not, and even though it's not sin, it's not sinful. It's the dunya. It's something that has distracted the people from Allah Azza wa Jal, and they're just living in desires only. Permissible desires, even though they're permissible desires. Habib's not talking about impermissible desires. So it's just desires, dunya, uh, and they justify themselves by saying it's halal. But then it leads to love of dunya, and he loves to stay in the dunya because he sees himself comfortable, and the proof and justification he's using it is that is not haram. But Allah, when he says halal, permissible, he also says what is wholesome and good. He says what from what we've given you that is halal, permissible, and wholesome and good. It's not just permissibility. There is something that's permissible, only allowed. It's just permissible. But there's something that is permissible but also wholesome and good. So look for the things that are permissible and also good and wholesome, by which you are become good, you become a wholesome person. And Habib's not just talking about food, he's talking about anything or all things that are in the realm of permissibility in all of the dunya. So what do you want from this dunya, from this world? So now, for instance, if a person wishes to buy a car, the car market uh, is another world altogether, with all of the different models and all the different specifications and all the different prices. And now you got electric cars, and you got cars, cheap cars, expensive cars, etc., etc. And you end up buying a tank. So a person needs to specify what he wants. Your abilities, your expenses, your budget. He says, I need a car with these specifications, uh, uh, with this economy, and it shouldn't. Or for instance, you live in a place where the parking is small, so there's no point buying a big car to tire yourself. You will you will waste so much time looking for a car park where you can park your car. You waste your time, you waste your petrol, just because you have a desire to buy a four wheel, a big four wheel. You wasted your time and you wasted your petrol waiting for, and some people wait, they're sitting in their car waiting for someone to leave a spot so that they can go and park their car. Isn't that waste of time? It is. And have you seen this? People just sitting in their car, hour, 2 hours. They've turned on the car with the AC on, and they got their internet, and they're watching stuff on their phone, and they're just hoping someone might leave and they can park their car. Habib is just giving an example. So a person becomes confused. So this Imam, may Allah reward him, he's saying, why confuse yourself? Just take what you need and start your journey. In front of you is the hereafter. Think about how you're going to please your Lord. May Allah help us. And then he says, excessive speech leads to empty chattering and heretical utterances. So, so excessive chattering leads to flattery and 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 heretical utterances like bid'ah or reprehensible innovations that look in the apparent form as something that's beautiful, but in fact it is. And then he says, excessive food leads to greed and artificial needs. So we are not prohibiting what Allah has made permissible. But if a person every single day gives his soul whatever he desires, it is dangerous for him. It's even dangerous for his health. Every one of us is now complaining about cholesterol and fat and all of these things. Before we used to eat whatever. Before we used to eat everything, even though, and we didn't have like exercise and sports. Even in Hadramaut, they say they specify the days in which they eat meat. They will say, for instance, Friday is the day where the mother or the wife will cook food that has meat in it. On this day, for instance, chicken. On this day, uh, uh, there will be no meat of any type, such that you, so that so that you so that without doubt there's a day comes to you where you eat something that your soul is not inclined towards, and the reality is most of the food that your soul is not inclined towards you is something that is beneficial for your body. He says excessive clothing leads to um, but let's just talk about one thing. Excessive sight leads to heedlessness and confusion. So about confusion, to be more specific, if if a person, for instance, does not lower his gaze when it comes to women, he will be confused because you are living in a society where, or in an age where where people uh, don't have something called inhibitions or or limits. They don't have limits because people have reached a point where where men are now looking like women. This is like leaving uh, all limits behind. What is the cause of this? What is the opposite of that? So, from the excessive gazing of of a man is to look at 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 beauty, and he wants more beauty and more beauty and more beauty to the point where he now adorns himself like a woman. And similarly, the case for a woman. So, if a person is married, the most beautiful woman for you is your wife. If you lower your gaze, and if you know or realize and understand that Allah has chosen her for you, then Allah Azza wa Jal will make for you in her blessings. And if you find, and because you'll see that if a woman who protects your honor and your house and and her dignity for you, isn't that beauty? What's the point of marrying a beautiful woman, but she doesn't care about who she speaks to on the social media? She likes whatever she follows any somebody writes a post and he puts a like, and Habib is advising the sisters, and maybe they might not like this advice. If if a woman has to enter into the social media accounts because she because maybe because she says there's benefit in it. Maybe a woman follows a doctor. A doctor has a page on Instagram, and he's a respectful person, and all of his topics of discussion are about medicine. You want to follow that person? Nothing wrong. He has beneficial articles. But the limits of your following this person is that you listen to them, you take benefit. If there's benefit, you write it down. But to put likes and write comments that, oh doctor, what you're saying is so amazing, and you're the best doctor, and I'm so happy listening to you here, you're entering, you're exiting what is correct. And Habib doesn't think that a respectful husband would like his wife doing that. Similarly, the case should be for the husband. All this so that we don't enter into the realm of excessiveness, God forbid. So now talking, we ask Allah Azza wa Jal that He uh, grants us God consciousness. So He says excessive clothing leads to boasting and ostentatious behavior. Habib, his what is the definition of clothing? Is by which you cover your nakedness, and by which you are in the eyes of people a respectable person, not someone who is rich or someone beautiful or great or charismatic or no, someone who's respectful. So if everyone wishes to buy some clothing for himself, whether it's a man or woman, put in your mind not that you be the most richest or the most beautiful looking, no, that you be respectful. uh, I just want people to respect me. And his intention is not even the people. But if a person is thinking like that in the first place, and he'll have ostentatious behavior, and Allah knows best, and we will suffice with this. Inshallah, we said that the lesson should be for an hour, and um, and the last moments will be for question and answers. Um, uh, Sister Mariam, kindly put the comment in Habib's message channel. He won't get this message. So this book is something that needs to be implemented. It's not just an article we're reading. We ask Allah that He grants us beneficial knowledge and that He makes us benefit from what we've heard. He is capable of doing that. The comment you've put, please put in the Himmanet live transmission so that Habib can read it. He can't read these messages over here. The question here about examining one's thoughts. Are there limits to how much one should think about his thoughts, whether it's a good thought or bad thought? What are the limits uh, one should be examining his thoughts? Now, this should be about thoughts that are like concealed, meaning in its apparent, it looks something nice. But as for if the thought is bad, apparently bad, there's no need for examination. But your question is about thoughts where there is a possibility of good or bad, meaning shaitan sometimes comes to people who he is now he's given up trying to put them in fall into big sins, major sins. So he comes in a treacherous way, where he comes in a good as a good person, and here you require examining the thoughts. For instance, for instance, we're talking about taking this self into account. We said the best time is to do before going to bed. Here, shaitan can come and say to you, before going to bed, you are tired. You're not focused, anyways. You should. You need to be focused in your taking yourself into account. So, take my advice. Uh, uh, take my advice. Take yourself into account after Fajr when you'll be fresh. So, a person says, "Oh, what he's saying is correct," but Shaitan's intention here was that he's not able to he's not able to stop you from taking yourself into account, but he wants you to to he, 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 he wants you to lessen the benefit of taking yourself into account by changing the time. So here a person needs to be true with Allah Azza wa Jal, that he fears Allah and seeks Allah's help to guide him, and he knows that shaitan simply wants to misguide him. Question: how do I know the appropriate reproachment or punishment for my soul? Habib did not speak about this because it requires another lecture, but in summary, since you've asked the question, Habib was worried not to extend the lesson too long. The correct punishment of the soul, now taking into account, needs to be with all honesty and frankness. Then after you've taken yourself into account, you put measures or controls or punishment. So the best punishment is to make up for what you missed out. So for instance, if you missed out on a good deed, you make up. You do the qada, expiation. And if you fall into sin, you repent. Is the most important thing. And then you um you follow the bad deed with the good deed with the same limb. So if for instance you disobeyed Allah with your eyes, you obey Allah with your eyes. You disobeyed Allah with your tongue, you obey Allah with your tongue. This is quick cure. Then this is not punishment, first of all. This is making up. After you've done taking yourself into account, you need to reproach yourself. You need to ask yourself, why did you do it? Aren't you afraid of Allah? Aren't you afraid of death? Aren't you afraid of the judgment? Are you a hypocrite? Are you doubting that you will die or you will be resurrected? This is called itab, or reproachment. Punishment is something severe. Is usually when you keep repeating the bad thing. And now, what is the punishment that is appropriate for you? Is you punish it with by preventing or depriving it of something that it likes or it desires, because the nafs, the soul, loves its desires. We're talking about permissible desires, by the way, not impermissible. So if you've deprived your soul of things that it likes, no. So when the soul realizes that the punishment means that it will be deprived of the things that it loves, here it'll stop itself because it loves those desires. So an example could be a person. You've made for yourself a schedule to give charity of food and charity, but it didn't happen. You couldn't do that. What should be the punishment? You deprive it of food, but with the intention of worship, which is by fasting. So, so our punishment will be obedience, would be a worship, not just pain, which is different than the punishments of the people of dunya, which is like cutting. They cut their salaries, etc. So, so in our self punishment, there is goodness in it. So you nurture it and raise it, rear it, and at the same time you get good deeds. So for instance, as Habib said, if somebody wanted to give food as charity and he wasn't able to give it, so you punish the self by 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 depriving it of food, but with the intention of fasting. And this is, Habib obviously said, is this is in summary, but it should inshallah benefit. We're living in this age of social media and TV channels where there's all these advertisements and pop-ups that is so difficult for us. What's the advice? Habib said the same advice, which is not extend your gaze to that which does not concern you. Habib saying, "May Allah bless you and your daughter who listens to Surah Al-Kahf every night." This is Allah's great fadl, and we ask Allah Azza wa Jal that she benefits with what she hears, and the Quran permeates into her spirit and her blood, and all of you. And say to your daughter that in listening to the Quran there is reward. With for every letter there's a hasana. People think that listening to Quran does not have reward. It has reward. May Allah bless your daughter. Somebody's asking, there's some people who these lessons are in the work times in Canada. But if we follow your time, we'll be outside our time. These lessons are recorded. If he misses out on live lessons, then she can follow recorded lessons, and you will not you will not miss out on any reward because you have a valid excuse. Allah grant us arrival of Dhul Hijjah and making the most of the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. So this person is saying somebody feels that he's close to Allah in dua in the night, like in or in the Mawlid or in the lectures, but when he prays and reads the Quran, he doesn't feel this closeness. And this is something that makes me really sad. What is the cause? This happens. It happens to a lot of people that when they're in the congregation and when they're with people, there is a spiritual presence. Some special nights, like in Ramadan, etc., or in a gathering of Mawlid. This is why Islam encouraged us to have these congregational dhikr and these gatherings of dhikr so that our hearts are illuminated. But if a person is by himself, these things become weakened. So, if you but you need to keep trying, keep putting effort, and Habib will give you a method that if you're by yourself and you feel that you don't have presence of heart, you you can you can give yourself a few moments where you listen to a recorded dhikr gathering so that you can bring back that spiritual feeling, or you listen to uh, a clip where a sheikh is making dua, where it gives you those 5 minutes of that connection, or you listen to a recitation of the Quran, so things like that. We said, may Allah قبلنا الوداع وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.